Good day, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. Pelicans Daily presented by Fan Arch. I'm your host, Dylan Bruton. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. The only way that this goes up is when it grows up. So y'all got to show up. You know what I'm saying? All right. Well, last episode I talked about the NBA trade that, shocked the world, sent everybody into an absolute tizzy, had everybody talking. You know what I'm saying? The shot heard around the world. And what trade was that? That was the trade between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Orlando Magic. And basically, long story short, the Grizzlies got a whole lot in exchange for Desmond Bain. A whole lot. You know what I'm saying? Anytime you're able to walk away from a trade getting 4 first round picks, you're in good spirit. You're very much in a happy mood. Um, Needless to say, right? I don't know what was picked up in the ethosphere and the spirit, but we somehow threw our hat in the ring. We somehow had a trade happen. And who do we have it with? We had it with the team that's in the NBA Finals. And it's kind of crazy because it's like, the Pacers just played last night, only lost by a little bit, but now the series has swung back into the favor of OKC. And then they make a trade to, they reacquired their first round pick from 2026 that previously was that we had picked up, and then we got the number 23rd pick and the rights to Mojave King. So I mean, I'm not gonna lie, we got out a little better than they did. If I'm gonna be real, I mean, two is better than one, like that one song. But this is a great draft. I've talked about in almost every video how this is the type of draft that you want to stack up and get multiple first round picks. You want to give yourself more opportunities to get more guys that could, add to the foundation, be a part of something greater and something bigger. You look at both of the teams that are in the NBA Finals right now. What two things do they have in common? Draft capital. They drafted a lot and they scouted well because they had a lot of assets that they acquired through trades. Pacers, OKC. That's you look at the teams that are successful. Success leaves clues. How is it that they're able to reach this standard? It's because they're building from the ground up. You look at a team like the Warriors, who's arguably like the last dynasty, right? They built that team from the draft. You look at a team like the Spurs, you know what I'm saying, in the Duncan Parker Ginobili years under Coach Popovich. Built those through the draft. Kawhi was a draft pick. Granted he was traded, but still, like you look at all these great teams throughout history, and most of them are built through the draft. Just how it goes. So hey, we cooking, and we ain't just cooking. We cooking with fish. We cooking with some fish grease. Okay, we get it right, and I'm very excited for draft night. I'm very excited for draft night. I think there's more that's going to come, but we got to talk about the pick that we just acquired. So pick number 23. Now pick number 23 is a very unique spot. As I said, this is a very deep draft. There's a lot of guys that have value, that have shown tremendous talent, and I think would be able to step right in automatically. Now, most likely at pick 23, because we still were able to keep our pick number 7. But with pick number 23, it's no guarantee you find a star, but if you find a star at pick 23, you're one happy son of a gun. But this is a very deep draft, and for certain positions, we would be able to get guys that fit into what we need and what we're looking for. Some guys that I feel like are probably going to be available by then that I think we should give a look. A guy like Neat Clifford, who, had a great, amazing year at Colorado State. They were very competitive this year. They made a deep run in the tournament. He projects as a high level 3-and-D type of guy, but a very polished, well-rounded player. Plays on both ends of the ball very well. Looks like the type of guy, and he's a bit more, he's older, he's a bit more seasoned. Looks like the type of guy who could be able to step in and, play automatically at a high level. Kind of gives me, like a mix between like Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, as a small forward who can also play as an undersized forward but can space the floor. So I think he'd be a great player. Will Riley is another one. He was a freshman and international prospect, came over, but he and Kasparas were killing it at Illinois. They were a really good duo, and he actually measured taller than was initially projected of him at the combine, and he's a very versatile, not the most athletic player, but he's a very versatile, skilled, kind of jumbo forward, and is able to, create his own shot, pass well, defend, just does all the little things well. And I think as a player, I think he's got a very bright future. He would also be someone that's valuable, especially and with both Neek and Will. We don't know what's going to happen with Herb or Trey, so it would be crucial for us to potentially, right, add more depth for one, but then just also in the event that something does happen, in the event that someone is able to meet the trade demands for a Trey Murphy or a Herb Jones. Another guy, Walter Clayton Jr. out of Florida, who had an amazing run this past tournament. You know what I'm saying? Tournament MVP, brought Florida to a championship, much to my disdain. But shout out to Walter Clayton. UF. As a Seminoles guy, you already know how it goes. But Walter Clayton Jr. Looks and projects to be just a very high level shot maker. Not necessarily a star, but definitely a guy who can come off the bench and have a role. I think like he can have a a Peyton Pritchard type of impact in the NBA. I definitely see that with him. Coming off the bench, he's a smart, heady player, shoots efficiently, doesn't force the issue, and he's got experience, and he's got a winning pedigree, and he just someone who had to overcome and had to really develop into where he's at now. So I really like his game, and I think that would it wouldn't hurt to have a player like him either coming off the bench or becoming our floor general. Who knows? Another guy, Thomas Sorber, out of Georgetown, who was a center, and he had one of the best seasons for a Georgetown center since Roy Hibbert, and going further back to like Othello Harrington, going back to like the real golden age of Georgetown big men with Mutombo, Mourning, Ewing, and he had a really good freshman year for Georgetown. Now, unfortunately, he's a bit smaller, but his wingspan and his defensive ability are enough to have people convinced that he's somebody that could be a high level starter. You know what I'm saying? And paired in the right system with the right players around him, you would be able to get the most amount with his talent, his ability. He's got a really good, he plays like very old school, low post game, can face up well. So, given that we've already got Eve, but we could, big man depth is very key for us. It wouldn't hurt to have a guy who can also, play defense, at a high level, but also can create his own shot, can operate out the low post. And then finally, a guy like John Berenger, who, out of France, he's 6'11", pushing 7 foot, looks like a Clint Capella, Tyson Chandler type as a rim runner, as a guy that, throw it up there, he's going to go get it. And, he's only 18. There's a lot of potential that he has, with his measurables, with his intangibles. But it's worthy to see like how high his ceiling is. And I think that's the thing that we have to look at is like, pick 23 again. It's low risk, but you want to get value. You want to get someone who has a potentially high ceiling. So I think that, either those guys or maybe some of these other guys we've already talked about, depending on if they slip in the draft and any trades happen, it can make for a very interesting pick. But I'm so happy that we got more picks because, again, the more picks that you have, the more opportunities you have to get a better player. That's just how it goes, common sense. All right. Next up, should we draft Cedric Coward? Now, Cedric Coward is a prospect who, as of recent, has been making a lot of headway, been appearing in a lot more mock drafts and a lot more people's discussions following the combine. My guy Chris Lambert, what I'm saying? Shout out to one day we're gonna connect. That's all I'm gonna say. But on Pelican Debrief, he wrote an article about Cedric Coward, and Cedric Coward's a 6'5", 6'6" shooting guard who can also play the small forward. Is an incredibly talented player at both ends. Can create his own shot. He only played 6 games this year for Washington State due to a shoulder injury, and he was almost going to transfer to Duke, which I think if he had went to Duke, Granted, we got a crazy recruiting class coming in, but him being an older player, I think he could have really catapulted to another level. But I'm also not mad at him for, utilizing the steam that he's on now and riding off that momentum and trying to build from there, because that's how you got to do it. But he averaged, about 18, 7, and 4 assists on 40% from three and nearly 2 blocks. And he's got almost 7'3" wingspan. Like, that's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy. And the guys that he's been compared to, this is a really good list of players. He's been compared to Kawhi. He's been compared to Chris Middleton. He's been compared to Michael Redd, Jarace Walker, James Jones. The latter two are more on the lower end of, like, as far as the ceiling, but that's the floor, sorry. But the ceiling comparisons, at pick 23, you're not, at pick 7 or pick 23, you're not complaining if you walk away from a draft with someone with Kawhi potential, Chris Middleton, or Michael Redd. Obviously, Chris Middleton and Michael Redd aren't at the same level as Kawhi, but they both were all-stars in their careers. Chris Middleton is still out there right now. Michael Redd was one of the best shooters of the 2000s and one of the best two guards in the league. So you're not at all walking away from there feeling like, damn, we ain't getting nobody. No, you're going, we got to steal. We got a gem. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's kind of the impact that Cedric Coward is having right now. Because a lot of people are very much looking at my boy Knoepel and looking at, okay, yeah, you do all these things very well. You have a high level of skill and intelligence, but athletically, right? How do you test and compare to top tier NBA athletes? And that's where a Cedric Coward, who offers like just a very versatile, well-rounded skill set at that 2 that can also play the 3, that's where he comes in as like, but I've got the athleticism. I've got those type of physical intangibles that y'all look for. And another thing that Chris Lambert talked about, he was saying that it would make more sense for us to draft Cedric Coward versus trying to trade up to get Ace Bailey. Because while Ace Bailey might have the higher ceiling, Cedric Coward, is more. He's 21. He's a little bit more mature, ready to step in and play day one. Which I'm not mad at that perspective, and I see where Chris is coming from. And then also, like, think about this too. Ace Bailey is really more so sick. He's 6'8", and Cedric Coward ain't that much shorter, but then he's got a longer wingspan than Ace, and they're very similar players in terms of being high usage and high performing, forwards on the perimeter that you can have be the guy. You know what I'm saying? And it's rare that you're gonna have opportunities to get someone who could be the guy in the later part of the first round. So if Cedric Coward is available at pick 23, you absolutely got to pick someone like him. Absolutely. And at pick 7, I've been very vocal about who I would want, which is either Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen, Kaman, but you could entice me on a Cedric Coward. You can sell me on that. I'll hear out and I'll give credence. If we go or pick 23, like if we get one of those guys I named and then he's still there at 23, absolutely pull the trigger, go get him. So I think we're in a much better predicament now than we were last year with the draft, and I think that's ultimately the best blessing. So now, something a little new, but viewer comments. Responding to y'all. You know what I'm saying? Y'all are the heartbeat that keeps going and flowing, and I appreciate it. I appreciate all the love so far. I appreciate like all the little jokes and all that. Like, trust me, bro. I'll be over here dying and cracking up. The first comment that I want to respond to, and I'm gonna do this every video now. I'm gonna respond to 2 or 3 depending on the timing, but I'm gonna just do 2. First comment that I want to respond to by Ricky Pronia 2494, who said, Trey is a proven player. I would not trade him unless you get a boatload in return. And I am in full agreement with you. Trey Murphy is a very talented young player, and there's a reason why you got even teams like the Celtics, who already have 2 high-level wings, potentially throwing their name in the ring, right? A team like the Celtics, who just won a championship last year with the combo of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and even they want Trey. Everybody wants Trey. He's over here like, which one of y'all coming home with Trigger? Like, he over here has his choice and picking. He's a high commodity, high value guy. Why? Because he's 24, 25. a 20 point plus scorer, able to create his own shot, able to play lockdown defense. 6'8", right? That is able to that doesn't grow on trees. That doesn't grow on trees. So I see exactly why someone like him would be in such high demand. So I'm in full agreement. I listed, what was President Dumar's requirements to get Trey Murphy, and it's going to require a proven veteran, a young prospect with talent, and multiple first round picks. And I'm in full agreement. In fact, I would raise it up even more, but that's on President Dumas. That's on him to make that decision, but that's exactly how I feel. And then the final comment that I'm going to respond to, because I really appreciate y'all, but Mark Semino, 4127, who has commented before, shout out to Mark, since day one. Now, he said we should trade Herb and Jose and Jordan Hawkins to the Rockets for Cam Whitmore, Jay Shante, and Jabari Smith Jr. Now, this trade, because I've talked about Jabari Smith on this channel, and I've talked about like the kind of player and the potential that he has and what he's shown so far. This is not the worst trade in the world, you know what I'm saying? And you're getting pretty much every position back in terms of, you got, we're giving up two of our guards, and they're giving us two forwards of theirs, and we're getting an extra guard. This is a trade that isn't bad, and I'm not fully opposed to. I think the thing I think about, especially with Cam Whitmore, is that I think Cam Whitmore has the type of talent to potentially be a lead guard somewhere. So, given that we've got DeJounte, we still got CJ, we got to figure out what happens with him, and then also like we've been looking at getting a two guard in this draft, whether it's a guy like Khan, whether it's a guy like a Cedric Coward now, or a guy like Trey Johnson, who I've talked about videos prior. Does that create a logjam? You already got Brandon Boston. You already got Antonio Reeves. Does that create a logjam? That's the one question I have. Jay Sean Tate, as a defender, as like that type of hustle, junkyard dog type player, I think he fits in that way for Herb. So it wouldn't be a bad trade. I just think Herb does it at a better level, right? In terms of just of his impact and what he's capable of. And then with Jabari, I think his ceiling is still very high. And though they are, kind of like putting stuff out there, I do believe that they're going to end up keeping Jabari. I think they picked him third or second. Yeah, they picked him third. And it's rare that with a player who isn't like an outright bust that you just kind of give up on them after 3 years. I don't know. I could very well see Houston keeping him though. We'll see. But I feel like it was interesting to talk about, and I appreciate y'all. And I'll respond to one more comment. Tina Miller, 635, if they trade Trey Murphy, I'm done. Tina, I feel you. That's how I feel if we get rid of Zion or Trey. And I don't see that happening, but who knows? A lot more in store, though, and that's why you want to make sure that you have subscribed, that you are liking and sharing. That's the only way that this channel grows. Y'all stay tuned for way more coverage because there's a lot more, and the NBA is rapidly changing right before our eyes. It's very exciting. So I'm more than happy to be the person who's delivering and giving y'all the news. No blues over here, just good news. But y'all have a great rest of y'all day. Enjoy yourselves, enjoy your families, and stay tuned for more great Pelicans content presented by Pelicans Daily and Fan Arch. Y'all have a good one. Ciao.